Greetings, I'm Dr. Warren Smedley, and today we're going to talk about giving feedback and gaining cooperation. So we're going to talk about coaching, and as we talk about coaching, we'll kind of get into this by talking about levels of competence. So when you're coaching somebody, you're trying to build their competence from low to high. So if we think about this in terms of 4 steps to building confidence, the first step, step 1, is when someone is unconsciously incompetent. In other words, they don't know something, they don't know that they don't know it, they don't know anything about it, and so you can't perform if you know nothing about that. If you've never seen an electronic medical record before, or you've never seen a particular electronic medical record before, you're not going to know how to work with it. Level 2 is being consciously incompetent, which means you recognize what it is and you recognize that you can't perform it. So you know that you can't perform it, but you can't perform it, so you're aware of it. 3 is conscious competence, and that's where if you really concentrate, you can actually do something. And as you see young nurses or other clinicians, phlebotomists learning how to draw blood, at first they're very nervous, they're not very confident, and as they do it more frequently, they become more confident in their ability to do it. Level 4 becomes unconscious competence, where they can do it without even thinking about it. So when an experienced phlebotomist can draw blood without hardly even thinking about it. They know exactly what to do, know how to do it. They've done it hundreds of times, and it's easy to do. There is a 5th level of competence, and that's where most of you will come in, and it's a whole different skill set, and that is level 5, which is actually teaching others how to do things. Different than learning to do it yourself and growing in your own competence, but being able to teach others is quite a challenge. I remember trying to teach my oldest daughter how to drive the car. And as we're out in a large parking lot and I'm trying to explain to her how to gently apply pressure to the accelerator pedal or to the brake pedal, it's really hard to describe the subtlety of that in a way that you can teach someone not to push too hard or not hard enough. Or when you're turning the corner in a car, how do you explain how to subtly turn the wheel so that you don't slide everybody over on the seats or dump things over on the seat? It's harder to teach than it is to actually do it yourself. And that's something that you need to be learning how to do as a manager. Psychology of coaching: when you're coaching someone on your team, you're going to need to go through these 4 steps. You're going to actually need to have an attitude that says that, okay, we can do this. They need to gain some knowledge. They need to build a skill. They need to turn that into a habit. So we start out with attitude, and here we need to get people first to understand that there's a need to learn something that would be helpful to them. Then they have to say, not only do I see the need, I have to want to actually have that skill, understand how to do that. They have to believe that it's possible to do that. They have to believe, okay, if I'm taught, I could actually do this. Then they actually need to get to the point where they're willing to try it. They're actually willing to experiment with it. And then they're ready for someone to show them how. And at this point, we start building knowledge. We go through fundamentals, concepts, principles with them to convey knowledge and how to do this particular skill. And then they build a skill. And at the bottom of this chart, you see there's a knowledge trap. And that's you learn the knowledge, and then you're really kind of afraid to build the skill. You kind of stop there. We don't want them to stop there. We need to practice. Now, you've probably heard the saying, practice makes perfect, and that's actually not true. Practice makes permanent. The wrong practice makes permanent the wrong outcome. So what we want is the right practice, and that requires strong coaching. So you need to make sure somebody is practicing their fundamentals, concepts, and principles correctly in order to build the skill correctly, not incorrectly. From there, as they're building a habit and growing that particular skill, we provide more coaching, give them feedback. We're continually following up with them, hold them accountable for doing what they're supposed to do, measuring their performance, and recognizing and rewarding good performance when they get there to reinforce it. Morale is an important thing to think about when it comes to performance and performance success. So here we have a 2x2 grid, knowledge and skills across the bottom, morale across the left-hand side. At some point, somebody is going to have, this is low morale. So this quit line shows more low morale. At some point, somebody's morale would be so low, and not suggesting any particular points different for everybody, but at some point, somebody's morale is so low that they'll quit. They just can't bear it. They just can't perform. Their morale's low. They're going to quit. So there we'll put the quit line somewhere down towards the bottom. And then towards the left is a failure line. Their knowledge or skills is so low that they can't perform adequately and they fail. So if you think about that as sort of the barriers to being successful in their performance, if you're in the first quadrant, you're low morale and low knowledge and skills. In this case, there's a low probability of success. This individual needs corrective action. They need a lot of work. Box number 2, their skills are high, but their morale is low. Here we also have a low probability of success because they've got good skills, but they're not motivated. So we need to try and motivate them to find ways to improve their morale. Box number 3, we have high morale, really positive outlook, but their skills are low. Their knowledge is low. So they need to be trained and encouraged to increase their probability of success. And of course, box number 4 is where we have high morale, high knowledge and skills. They're being successful, and they're the ones that we should be preparing for future leadership. We don't want them to stay there forever because they'll burn out there. We want to prepare them for future leadership. What does the developmental process look like? We'll just go through it quickly. When we identify something that they're doing is a knowledge, a skill, or an attitude that needs to be improved, or we identify what feedback is needed, we try and keep that results focused. We're going to picture the improvement, make sure people understand what it is that they should be doing. We want them to clearly be able to visualize the result. We don't want to be muddied up. Create a positive attitude, help the person be willing to fix the issue that needs to be fixed. Build an action plan and involve them in it in order to get buy-in. Provide them with support them as they go through this process. Practice. We said right practice with strong coaching. We want to coach them. We want to help them practice. We want them to develop the good skills. We want to pay attention. Don't just send them away to learn it on their own. Make sure you're involved with them. Help them through this process. Reinforce their progress to encourage them, and then recognize improvements as they come. We want to reinforce their behavior by recognizing and at least verbally rewarding and recognizing those improvements. So how do we tell when performance is correct or not? Well, the first thing we need to do is to clearly establish performance expectations. And this is an area where managers tend to fall apart. We tend to do a poor job of setting really clear performance expectations. So let's just say that this blue arrow, anything inside the blue, is considered the expectations for a person's performance. As long as you're functioning inside the blue arrow, the sort of the tube of the blue arrow, then you're performing at a level that we expect. Now, there is a margin for performance error somewhere outside of that. So most managers don't fire a person for poor performance the first time they jump outside the blue box or the blue arrow. If you perform poorly for some reason, there is some margin for performance error. It may be big, it may be small. And that's kind of you as a manager determining in your own mind how much poor performance are you willing to take before you do corrective action. So let's do an example and put an actual performance line in here. So this red line is going to represent the actual performance over time of an employee. So you see on the left-hand side, the employee starts out inside the blue arrow and kind of wobbles around a little bit in there. And after time, they pop outside of the blue arrow into that space that's just outside the blue arrow. So that right there represents they're not performing to expectations, so they're underperforming, and this would require coaching. So this requires you to come in and provide some coaching to get them back inside the blue. And you see that you've coached this person, they've gotten back inside the blue. Well, and then as time goes on, the red arrow goes back outside. In fact, in this case, it goes outside of the margin for performance error. And now we've got a significant error, and this requires correction. So how do we approach that? And this gets to the communication piece. This is how do we communicate that to the employee or the associate? First, we need to know what kind of a problem do we have, because we're going to approach it differently. So we're going to ask questions to find out, is this an attitude problem? Is this a skills problem? Or is this a knowledge problem? You would approach each of these very differently. If this was a skills problem, you would approach it one way. If this is an attitude problem, you would approach it a very different way. So here we're going to use the STAR formula to give feedback when results are not optimal. So now we got something that needs to be corrected. And this works for coaching as well. When somebody's underperforming and we need to coach, or when someone really needs corrective action. So we're going to use the STAR formula here. We're going to state the facts of the situation, and we'll run through this in a second. We're going to review the desired result of the task. Here's the task. Here's the desired result. Here's the action that was taken in this case, and then the result of the action, or frankly, the lack of action. So we're going to start by stating the facts of the situation. You're going to lay out all the facts as you know them. Try your best to get as much of the facts as you can before you have this conversation. Stay focused on the facts. Stay focused on the desired results. You were asked to do this in order to get Y. You're asked to do X in order to get Y result. This is what you did or did not do, and this was the result or the lack of action that you took. Now, when we give constructive feedback, that helps to kind of outlines what it was that caused that problem that we saw that requires corrective action. We're going to add AR at the end. So we're going to use a STAR formula and add an additional AR at the end, STAR AR, in order to give constructive feedback. The AR stands for alternative action and a better result that would be expected. So clearly define for the employer, the associate, what an alternative action should be and what the better result is that we're expecting. And to the extent that you can get the employer associate involved in developing the alternative action, that gets even better buy-in. So let them participate in the process. When it comes to coaching, remember that change doesn't happen fast. Don't expect it to happen overnight. Now, there can be situations where the violation the corrective action needed is so severe that it has to happen quickly. But in most cases, we're really coaching people for underperforming, and changes, especially you're talking about skill development or knowledge acquisition. You need to give them time, and you understand it doesn't happen fast. Provide opportunities for small wins. If we use a baseball example, don't expect your associate who's struggling to step up to the plate and swing for a home run, because if they're swinging only for home runs, they're going to strike out a bunch of times. Look for small wins. Give them small things to do well and help them achieve small wins. You can encourage them and appreciate and recognize those small wins. That will encourage them, that will energize them and motivate them to continue on the improvement curve. Congratulate them on their progress and hang in there as a coach. Some principles that may help you to gain enthusiastic cooperation. These principles come from How to Win Friends and Influence People, the Dale Carnegie course the whole thing by Dale Carnegie. You can buy this book on Amazon for a few dollars. It's well worth the read. Keep a positive attitude. Don't be critical, negative, or whiny. Be in your discussion in a friendly manner. Keep it friendly. Find easy points of agreement that get the other person saying yes. Let the other person do most of the talking. That requires you to be patient and to be a good listener. Take time to gather and present the facts. Show respect for the other person's opinion. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Let the other person talk through. I find this to be so helpful. People will talk through their problems, and they know when they're having trouble, and they'll talk through it, and they'll talk themselves into the right answer. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. Buy-in is higher. Put yourself in the other person's shoes and try honestly to see things from their point of view. Talk about the mistakes you've made in your own life and career before pointing out someone else's mistakes. Let the other person save face. Appeal to the person's nobler motives. Challenge him or her to do what is right. Sometimes you just have to challenge them to do the right thing. Thank you.